Attention! This is not just another YouTube video. What you're about to witness will shatter everything you thought you knew about NASA's lunar missions and what really lurks beneath the moon's surface. Are you prepared to discover the horrifying truth about what happened to the Artemis crew, the classified protocols they never wanted public? Then act now. Demolish that subscribe button right now. Annihilate the notification bell, obliterate the like button, and share this video everywhere, because the entities I'm about to expose are watching, and this information could disappear at any moment. The countdown to revelation begins now. The memory hits me like a sledgehammer every time. That wavering transmission from the lunar surface. Dr. Actor's voice barely recognizable through the static. His last words still echo in my nightmares. "We were wrong, Mike. It wasn't abandoned. They were waiting. God help us. They were waiting all along." Then the scream. That impossible scream that shouldn't have carried through the vacuum of space, yet somehow transmitted perfectly through our comms. A scream that started human, but ended as something else entirely. Something that made the blood freeze in my veins and haunted the sleep of everyone in mission control that day. That was 2 years, 4 months, and 17 days ago. I've counted every single day since. Now I'm sitting in a sterile NASA conference room on the 3rd sub-basement of Johnson Space Center, a place so secure that even most NASA employees don't know it exists. The walls are a particular shade of government beige that seems designed to drain the life from anyone who stares at them too long. No windows, no decorations, just a long mahogany table that's seen better days and chairs that cost taxpayers more than my car. Deputy Director Henderson sits across from me, his silver hair perfectly combed, his navy suit immaculate as always. He explains in that measured, bureaucratic tone that I'm the ideal candidate for what they're calling the Artemis Restoration Mission. The real name should be Clean Up Our Goddamn Mess Before Anyone Finds Out. But PR would never approve that one. You're the only surviving member of the original remote operations team with the security clearance and expertise we need, Henderson says, sliding a thick folder across the table. The folder is bound in red leather with no markings except a small embossed symbol I've never seen before, not NASA's logo, something older, something that makes my skin crawl just looking at it. Plus, your psyche valves suggest you've processed the trauma better than most. Processed the trauma? I almost laugh in his face. I haven't slept more than 3 hours straight since watching my colleagues die on grainy monitors while I sat helpless in Houston. I've been through 4 therapists, 2 failed relationships, and enough prescription medications to stock a small pharmacy. But sure, let's go with processed. We've made improvements to the protocols, he continues, tapping the folder with a manicured fingernail. Stricter containment procedures, better fail-safes. Those didn't help Dr. Akhtar's team, I mutter, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. I still see their faces sometimes. Akhtar, Rodriguez, Chen, and Kapoor, brilliant scientists reduced to screaming static in an instant. Henderson's face darkens, the fluorescent lights casting deep shadows across his features. For a moment, he looks almost inhuman. We didn't know what we were dealing with then. We do now. I open the folder. The first page contains a photograph I've never seen before, the original Artemis base on the lunar surface. But something's wrong with the image. There's a distortion around the edges, a warping of space that shouldn't be possible. And in the background, barely visible, a structure that doesn't match any of the base's components. Something that looks almost like a pyramid, but with angles that hurt. My eyes to follow. The next pages contain 9 protocols, each more disturbing than the last. As I read them, my mouth goes dry and I feel the coffee I had earlier threatening to come back up. These aren't safety measures for exploring an abandoned alien structure. These are rules for interacting with something still active, still dangerous, something still alive. Protocol 1. Maintain minimum distance of 6 kilometers from the primary structure except during designated operational windows. Protocol 2. No direct observation of the structure during lunar night. Protocol 3. All communications with Houston must utilize the quantum encryption package. Protocol 4. Initial approach to the structure must occur within the first 3 hours of lunar dawn. Protocol 5. No biological material is to make direct contact with the structure under any circumstances. Protocol 6. Only the designated containment specialist may approach within 100 meters of the structure. Protocol 7. Expect communications. Interference within 120 meters of the structure. Utilize only pre-approved phrases if contact is maintained. Protocol 8. If the structure exhibits autonomous movement, retreat immediately to minimum safe distance, 250 meters, and initiate containment procedure Alpha. Protocol 9. Once containment procedure Alpha is initiated, complete dispersal must occur within 210 seconds. Failure to complete dispersal will result in degradation of the containment matrix. I look up at Henderson, my hands trembling slightly. What exactly is Containment Procedure Alpha? Henderson's expression doesn't change. You'll be briefed on that during your training. It's specialized. And what happens if the containment fails? I ask, already knowing I won't like the answer. Then Protocol 11 goes into effect, he says, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. I flip through the folder again. There's no Protocol 11 listed here. Henderson stands, straightening his tie with mechanical precision. That's because Protocol 11 is need to know only. And right now, Dr. Carter, you don't need to know. He checks his watch, an antique Omega Speedmaster, the same model worn by the Apollo astronauts. Your training begins tomorrow at 600. I suggest you get some rest. As if I could sleep after this. The next 3 weeks are a blur of specialized training, medical examinations, and psychological evaluations. They put me through simulations so realistic I sometimes forget I'm still on Earth. They teach me to operate equipment I've never seen before, devices that seem to defy conventional physics, with interfaces that make my head hurt if I look at them too long. The containment team consists of specialists from disciplines I didn't even know existed. Dr. Eliza Stern, a quantum physicist whose theories on multidimensional space earned her both a Nobel Prize and a reputation for being slightly unhinged. Major James Rollins, a 20-year Navy SEAL with a specialization in unconventional threats, whatever that means, and Dr. Sarah Park, a xenobiologist whose previous work remains entirely classified. None of them will meet my eyes for more than a few seconds. None of them talk about what happened to the previous team, but I catch them watching me sometimes with expressions that look almost like pity. On the final day of training, Henderson calls me into his office. Unlike the sterile conference room, his personal space is filled with artifacts from NASA's history. A piece of heat shield from Apollo 11, a flag that flew on the first space shuttle mission, photographs of Henderson with various presidents and world leaders. "You've done well in training," he says, not looking up from the papers on his desk. "But there's something you need to understand before you go up there." He finally raises his eyes to meet mine, and I'm startled by the fear I see in them. What we found on the moon, it's not just alien, it's ancient. Older than humanity, older than Earth itself, perhaps. "What is it?" I ask, my mouth suddenly dry. Henderson shakes his head. "We don't know. Not really. But we've found echoes of it throughout human history. Cave paintings from 30,000 years ago showing the same structure. Sumerian tablets describing visitors from beyond the stars. The Nazca lines in Peru pointing directly at the lunar coordinates where we found it." He pulls out a drawer and removes a small wooden box, intricately carved with symbols I don't recognize. "And this," He opens the box to reveal a small object, no larger than a golf ball, made of a material that seems to shift and change as I look at it. Sometimes metallic, sometimes crystalline, sometimes something else entirely. This was found in Antarctica in 1938 by a German expedition. It predates human civilization by at least 100,000 years, and it's made of the same material as the structure on the moon. I resist the urge to reach out and touch it. Why are you telling me this? Henderson closes the box with a snap. Because you need to understand what's at stake. This isn't just about containing an alien artifact. It's about protecting humanity from something that has been watching us, influencing us, perhaps even guiding our evolution for longer than we've been human. He leans forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. And Dr. Carter, I think it's getting impatient. 28 days later, I'm aboard Artemis 9, final approach to the lunar surface. The descent is textbook, Commander Rollins guiding our craft down with the steady hands that come from years of military precision. Beside him, Flight Engineer Park monitors our systems with quiet efficiency, her fingers dancing across the control panels with practiced grace. Neither of them knows the full truth of why we're really here. Their mission briefing described a routine maintenance operation at the abandoned Artemis base, checking equipment and preparing for the next stage of lunar exploration. Only I know we're here to contain something that killed 4 people, arguably some of the best scientific minds on Earth, in ways classified beyond top secret. My specialty was supposed to be lunar geology. Now I'm NASA's reluctant exobiological containment specialist. Funny how careers change. The lunar module shudders as we enter the final descent phase. Through the triangular window, I can see the desolate landscape spreading out below us. Grey, lifeless, ancient. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, is the thing we've come to contain, the thing that's been waiting. Touchdown in 5, Rollins announces, his Tennessee drawl oddly comforting in the clinical environment of our lander. Mike, you good back there? All green, I respond, triple-checking my equipment. My hands tremble slightly, and I hide them by adjusting my harness. The specialized containment gear takes up most of the storage space in my section of the lander, equipment that Rollins and Park believe is standard. Geological survey tools. If they knew what it really was, what it was designed to do, they might refuse to continue the mission. And Henderson made it very clear what would happen if the mission failed. Just eager to stretch my legs, Park says with a small smile, her first attempt at humor since we left Earth. 3 days in this tin can. I'd kill for a proper shower. If only she knew that killing might be on the agenda, regardless. The lander touches down with a gentle bump, dust billowing. Around us in the airless environment, Rollins goes through the shutdown checklist with methodical precision, each item called out and confirmed by Park. I stare out the window, searching the horizon for any sign of the structure, but we're too far away. Protocol 1. Maintain minimum distance of 6 kilometers from the primary structure except during designated operational windows. Home sweet home, Rollins says as we cycle through the airlock in our EVA suits. The suits are next generation. Technology more flexible and resilient than anything used on previous missions. Mine has been specially modified to accommodate the containment equipment with additional power systems and reinforced seals. Let's get the rover prepped. The Lunar rover is a newer model than the original Apollo versions. Larger, enclosed, and capable of longer excursions. It takes us 90 minutes to assemble and check all systems, the process familiar from countless simulations back on Earth. I'm grateful for the distraction, for having something to do with my hands, besides imagining what might be waiting for us beyond the horizon. As we work, I notice Park staring up at Earth, hanging in the black sky like a blue marble. Beautiful, isn't it? She says, her voice soft in my helmet speakers. Hard to believe everything we've ever known is on that little ball. Not everything, I mutter, then catch myself. I mean, there's plenty to discover out here too. Park gives me an odd look but doesn't pursue it. She's too professional for that. Base camp established, Rollins reports back to Houston, his voice crisp and formal. There's a 20-second delay before we get confirmation, the time it takes for radio waves to travel from the moon to Earth and back. That delay feels like an eternity, reminding me how utterly alone we are up here. The closest humans are 238,000 miles away, too far to help if things go sideways. We'll make our first approach at 0600 tomorrow, I tell them as we set up our temporary habitat, a pressurized dome that will serve as our home for the next week. Remember, I need at least 2 hours to set up the monitoring equipment before we can proceed to the site. Roger that, Doctor, Rollins says, his military training evident in his unquestioning acceptance of orders. He doesn't ask why a geologist needs special monitoring equipment. That's the beauty of military discipline. You follow orders first and ask questions never. Inside our cramped habitat, I unpack my personal gear, including a sealed case containing my real mission tools, a specialized electromagnetic field generator designed to disrupt quantum entanglement, a communications device that operates on principles I barely understand, and most importantly, a laminated card with the 9 protocols I've memorized but can't afford to forget. As Park and Rollins prepare our evening meal, freeze-dried pasta that tastes like cardboard with a hint of tomato, I slip away to the small privacy partition at the back of the habitat. From a hidden pocket in my personal effects, I remove a small pill bottle that wasn't part of my official equipment. Inside are 12 small blue capsules, a last resort provided by Dr. Stern before we left Earth. If you start to experience synchronization, she had told me, her eyes deadly serious, if you find yourself thinking the same thoughts over and over or moving in perfect unison with others without meaning to, take one immediately. It won't stop the process, but it will buy you time to implement Protocol 11. I still don't know what Protocol 11 is, but the fear in Stern's eyes when she mentioned it told me everything I needed to know about its severity. That night, while my crewmates sleep, I review the classified footage from the first expedition. Most of it is heavily redacted, black bars and static obscuring the most critical moments, but certain frames remain clear enough to haunt my dreams for years to come. Dr. Akhtar's team, setting up their equipment near what appears to be a simple outcropping of lunar rock, except it isn't rock. The structure only resembles stone from certain angles. From others, it seems to bend light around itself, becoming almost invisible, a hole in reality rather than a physical object. In one sequence, Dr. Rodriguez approaches the formation with a specialized scanner. As she moves closer, the device begins to malfunction, the readout displaying impossible values: negative mass, inverted gravity, temporal displacement. Rodriguez turns to the camera, her expression confused, then alarmed as the scanner begins to vibrate in her hand. In the final unredacted clip, Dr. Akhtar approaches the formation, extends a specialized probe, and then static, just like I remember from mission control. When transmission resumed 20 minutes later, the camera showed only empty lunar dust where 4 astronauts had stood. No bodies, no equipment, just emptiness, as if they'd never been there at all. Except for a single glove lying in the dust, a glove that seemed to be moving ever so slightly, as if the hand inside was still trying to grasp something. I close the file and stare out the small viewport at the lunar landscape, bathed in the harsh, unfiltered light of the sun. Somewhere out there, just beyond the horizon, is the thing we discovered. The thing NASA wants me to contain while pretending it doesn't exist. Tomorrow, we approach it. Tomorrow we face what killed my friends. I check. My watch. 6 hours until lunar dawn. I wonder if I'll live to see lunar night. Sleep eludes me, as it has so often since that day in mission control. Instead, I watch lunar dawn creep across the desolate landscape, a line of harsh light slowly advancing across the grey dust, shadows retreating like living things, fleeing the light. The sun on the moon doesn't rise so much as switch on, stark, unfiltered brilliance casting knife-edge shadows across the dust, no atmosphere to soften the transition between night and day. Protocol 4. Initial approach to the structure must occur within the first 3 hours of lunar dawn. My watch beeps at 5:30 a.m., local time. Though time feels arbitrary here, a human construct imposed on the timeless lunar landscape. I wake the others, who seem to have slept better than I did. Park looks refreshed, her movements crisp as she prepares for the day's mission. Rollins is already checking and rechecking his equipment, the methodical actions of a man who knows his life might depend on everything functioning perfectly. By 0600, we're suited up and loading the rover with equipment. Mostly my specialized gear that neither Rollins nor Park question, though I catch Park giving one of the quantum resonance disruptors a curious glance. The military science divide works in my favor. They assume my instruments are standard geological tools. If they knew what I was really measuring, they'd probably refuse to drive me to the site. Navigation programmed. Park announces checking the rover's systems. The display shows a route that will take us directly to the coordinates where the structure was last observed. ETA to survey site 38 minutes. Copy that, Rollins responds, his face obscured behind his helmet visor, but his voice steady and confident. Mike, you strapped in back there? I double-check my harness, then the containment equipment secured beside me. Affirmative. Let's roll. The rover glides over the lunar surface with surprising smoothness, its 6 wheels designed to handle the uneven terrain. Through the transparent dome, the stars remain visible despite the sunlight, pinpricks of light in the eternal blackness of space. No atmosphere to scatter the light and create a blue sky, just eternal blackness punctuated by stars and the harsh white glare of the sun. As we drive, I check and recheck the containment equipment, running through the procedures in my mind. The quantum resonance disruptors need to be placed in a precise pentagonal formation around the structure. The containment field they generate will, theoretically, isolate the structure's influence, preventing it from affecting us or our equipment. At least, that's what the briefing said. No one knows for sure, because no one has successfully contained it before. So, Park says, breaking the silence after several minutes, what exactly are we looking for at this survey site? I've rehearsed this answer dozens of times, the cover story drilled into MB during training. Subsurface anomalies. The early Artemis missions reported unusual density readings that might indicate water ice deposits or lava tubes. Could be valuable for future habitation efforts. Huh? Park nods, seemingly satisfied with the explanation. Thought they'd mapped all that stuff already. Science is never finished, I reply, the practice line rolling off my tongue with practiced ease. It's not even a lie, really. We are looking for anomalies. Just not the kind she's thinking of. Rollins chuckles, the sound distorted slightly by the comm system. That's what my son's 3rd grade teacher says. Kid comes home talking about how they changed Pluto again. The casual conversation helps mask my growing anxiety as we approach our destination. With each kilometer, I feel the weight of dread building in my chest, a physical pressure that makes it hard to breathe. My hands instinctively check the specialized taser concealed in my suit's utility pocket. A last resort. Tool not listed in the official equipment manifest. Dr. Stern had pressed it into my hands just before we boarded the shuttle. If someone becomes compromised, she had whispered, use this. It disrupts the neural patterns that the entity uses to establish synchronization. It won't kill them, but it will break the connection. Temporarily. The way she emphasized temporarily told me everything I needed to know about the permanence of the entity's influence. Protocol 5. No biological material is to make direct contact with the structure under any circumstances. At the 2-kilometer mark, I asked Rollins to stop the rover. The landscape here is featureless, just endless grey dust and scattered rocks. But according to the navigation system, we're approaching the outer perimeter of the area where the structure was last observed. Need to set up the perimeter monitoring system, I explain, unloading 4 tripod-mounted devices from the rover's storage compartment. Each one is about the size of a microwave oven with a complex array of sensors and emitters on top. Want a hand? Park offers, already reaching for one of the devices. No, I say too quickly, then force a calmer tone. No thanks, these are, calibrated to my biometrics. Company protocol, you know how it is. Park shrugs, the gesture barely visible in her bulky suit. Contractors and their proprietary BS. I place the devices in a square formation, each about 100 meters apart, activating them with a code only I know. They're not geological instruments at all, but quantum resonance disruptors designed to create a preliminary containment field. The technology is experimental, based partly on what we learned from the incident with Akhtar's team. As each device powers up, a soft blue light begins to pulse at its center, barely visible in the harsh lunar daylight. When I return to the rover, my suit's external thermometer reads 45 degrees Celsius in the shadow, 120 degrees Celsius in the sunlight, lunar extremes. Yet somehow, despite the environmental controls in my suit, I feel cold to my bones, a deep chill that seems to emanate from within rather than without. All set? Rollins asks, his voice professional, but with an undercurrent of curiosity. I nod, the gesture lost in my bulky helmet. Proceed at half speed from here. I need to monitor these readings. I pull out a tablet showing scrambled data that would look like geological measurements to the untrained eye, but are actually monitoring for the specific electromagnetic patterns associated with the entity. The display shows normal background radiation, standard gravitational readings, nothing out of the ordinary, yet. The rover creeps forward, its electric motors nearly silent in the vacuum of the lunar environment. The only sound is our breathing, amplified by the suit microphones and the occasional crackle of the comm system as it compensates for interference. At the 1-kilometer mark, my instruments begin registering anomalies, subtle distortions in the local gravitational field, fluctuations in background radiation that shouldn't be possible. The tablet display flashes a warning, the numbers shifting from green to yellow. We should see it any minute now, I murmur, more to myself than my companions. And then we do, rising from the lunar regolith like a geometric tumor. The structure first appears as an innocuous formation of dark rock, a simple outcropping that might be overlooked if you weren't specifically looking for it. But as we approach, its true nature becomes apparent. Parts of it seem to fold inward impossibly, surfaces reflecting light at angles that defy physics. It's roughly pyramidal, but with edges that seem to waver when viewed peripherally, as if it exists partially in dimensions we can't perceive. The material isn't rock, isn't metal, isn't anything I can identify. It seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, a hole in reality shaped like a structure. What the hell is that? Park whispers, slowing the rover to a crawl, her scientific curiosity warring with instinctive caution. The survey site, I say flatly, trying to keep the fear from my voice. Park here. We don't get any closer in the vehicle. That's not natural, Rollins states with military directness. His training allowing him to process the impossible sight without visible panic. NASA didn't mention any structures. I feign surprise, though my heart is hammering against my ribs so hard, I'm sure they can hear it through the comm system. Interesting, could be an unusual volcanic formation. That's why we're here, to investigate anomalies. Rollins doesn't look convinced, but he doesn't argue. His military training has taught him to adapt to unexpected situations. How do you want to proceed? I'll approach on foot with the portable equipment. Standard procedure is to maintain a distance of at least 50 meters for initial readings. A lie, but one that serves Protocol 6. Only the designated containment specialist may approach, within 100 meters of the structure. I should accompany you, Rollins says, his training kicking in. Safety protocols. Actually, I interrupt, these readings are extremely sensitive to electromagnetic interference. Additional suit systems would corrupt the data. Another lie, but I can't risk them getting closer. I'll maintain constant communication and stay in your line of sight. Park looks uneasy, her scientific training at odds with the situation. I don't like splitting up. It's by the book, I assure her, gathering my equipment. The main containment device is heavy even in lunar gravity, a backpack-sized unit with 5 smaller nodes attached to it. I'll be 20 minutes tops. Before they can protest further, I exit the rover's airlock and step onto the lunar surface. The gravity, 1/6 of Earth's, makes every movement feel dreamlike despite my weighted boots. Each step kicks up a small cloud of dust that settles immediately in the airless environment. I approach the structure carefully, each step measured, my eyes never leaving the alien geometry before me. At 150 meters, I deploy the first quantum resonance disruptor, activating it with a code only I know. The small device hums to life, sending invisible waves of energy toward the structure. Through my helmet speakers, I hear Rollins's voice. "Mike, you're breaking up. Repeat your status." Protocol 7. Expect communications interference within 120 meters of the structure. Utilize only pre-approved phrases if contact is maintained. Status green, I respond mechanically, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Proceeding with initial survey. Communications may be intermittent due to background radiation. At 100 meters, I stop and set up the primary monitoring station. From this distance, the structure seems larger than it did from the rover, its dimensions shifting subtly as I observe it. The surface isn't static as it first appeared, but undulates almost imperceptibly, like the chest of a sleeping creature. I force myself to look away, remembering Dr. Stern's warning about prolonged observation. My instruments display readings that would be nonsensical to conventional science. Quantum states existing simultaneously, radiation patterns that change when observed, gravitational microfluctuations that shouldn't be possible. The tablet screen flickers, the display struggling to represent values it wasn't designed to measure. I remember Dr. Akhtar's last message. It wasn't abandoned. They were waiting. Who or what they are remains classified beyond my clearance level. All I know is what the protocols tell me, how to contain it, not what it is. At that moment, a tremor passes through the lunar regolith beneath my boots. So slight I might have imagined it, except my instruments spike wildly in response. The structure's surface ripples more visibly now, like dark water disturbed by a stone. Patterns form and dissolve on its surface, geometric shapes that seem to follow some alien mathematics. I freeze, years of training battling against primal fear. Every instinct screams at me to run, to get back to the rover, to leave this thing behind. But I know what happens if we don't contain it. I've seen the simulations, the projections of what could happen if the entity establishes a foothold on Earth. Protocol 8. If the structure exhibits autonomous movement, retreat immediately to minimum safe distance, 250 meters, and initiate containment procedure Alpha. My hand moves to the specialized canister on my belt, the key component of containment procedure Alpha. Inside is a substance that NASA officially classifies as experimental regolith stabilizer. Unofficially, it's something else entirely. something derived from materials found at the crash site in New Mexico back in 1947. Yeah, that crash site. Turns out some conspiracy theories have a kernel of truth. Mike, do you copy? Park's voice crackles through the static. We're getting weird readings in the rover. Something's affecting our systems. Copy, I respond, fighting to keep my voice level. Completing initial survey. Stand by. The structure pulses once, a ripple running through its impossible geometry. My instruments scream with data, the display flashing red warnings I've never seen before. Something is happening, something is waking up. I initiate containment procedure Alpha with hands that refuse to remain steady. The canister's locking mechanism requires a 3-digit code. My gloved fingers clumsy as I punch in 537. A soft hiss signals the seal breaking, and a faint blue mist escapes, hanging in the vacuum before dissipating. Protocol 9. Once containment procedure Alpha is initiated, complete dispersal must occur within 210 seconds. Failure to complete dispersal will result in degradation of the containment matrix. In simpler terms, I have 3 and 1/2 minutes to spread this stuff in a precise pattern around the structure, or we're all screwed. I back away from the structure, carefully, placing compact dispersal nodes in a pentagonal formation. Each node must be exactly 85 meters from the structure's apparent edge. A challenge when that edge seems to shift and waver. The nodes are designed to work with the quantum resonance disruptors I placed earlier, creating a multi-layered containment field. Mike, we're losing telemetry from your suit. Rollins's voice cuts through increasing static. Return to the rover immediately. Negative, I respond, moving to position the third node. Survey requires full deployment of monitoring equipment. Stand by. That's not a request, Doctor. Rollins counters, military authority hardening his voice. We're detecting seismic activity. Safety protocols dictate immediate withdrawal. He's not wrong. My own instruments show increasing vibrations beneath the lunar surface. The structure's movements are becoming more pronounced, its edges blurring as if parts of it exist in multiple places simultaneously. The surface patterns are moving faster now, shifting from geometric shapes to something that looks disturbingly like writing. I place the 4th node, my movements becoming frantic. 90 seconds left. The lunar dust beneath my boots begins to shift and swirl, defying the airless environment. It moves with purpose, forming patterns that hurt my eyes to look at directly. Concentric circles, spirals, and shapes that seem to fold in on themselves. Mike! Park's voice now, panic evident even through the distortion. Something's happening to the rover's systems. All displays are showing the same symbol, some kind of, I don't know, like a spiral or... Her transmission cuts off abruptly. I look back toward the rover, now a small white dot in the distance. Through my helmet's magnification, I can see both Rollins and Park still inside, but they're motionless, staring at something I can't see. 60 seconds. I place the final node with trembling hands. The complete pentagon now surrounds the structure, each node pulsing with soft blue light. I activate the containment sequence from my wrist computer. A confirmation tone sounds in my helmet. Containment procedure Alpha initiated, I report to no one, returning to minimum safe distance. I back away, never taking my eyes off the structure. At 30 seconds, the nodes begin to emit a high-pitched whine that somehow carries through the vacuum. The sound makes my teeth ache and my vision blur. The structure's surface is now in constant motion, patterns flowing across it like oil on water. At 15 seconds, arcs of blue-white energy connect the nodes, forming a pentagonal cage around the structure. The lunar dust inside the perimeter rises in defiance of gravity, swirling in complex patterns that mirror the symbols on the structure's surface. At 5 seconds, I reach what I hope is the minimum safe distance. The structure's surface is now in constant motion, parts of it stretching toward the energy barrier like fingers testing a fence. I can feel something emanating from it. Not heat, not radiation, but something else. A presence, an awareness. Zero. The containment field flashes once, blindingly bright. When my vision clears, the structure appears dormant again, its surface once more resembling ordinary lunar rock. My instruments show normal readings, or as normal as they get around this thing. The dust settles. The vibrations cease. I exhale slowly, realizing I've been holding my breath. Containment successful. For now. I turn back, toward the rover, relieved to see movement inside. Rollins and Park seem to be recovering from whatever affected them. I begin the long walk back, each step lighter than it should be, even in lunar gravity, the weight of dread temporarily lifted. But as I approach the rover, I notice something odd. Both Rollins and Park are staring at me through their helmet visors, not with relief, but with an intensity that makes my skin crawl. Their postures are identical, heads tilted at precisely the same angle, hands resting on their knees in perfect symmetry. Containment successful, I report as I reach the rover's airlock, ready to return to base. Neither responds. They continue to stare, unblinking. Rollins? Park? Do you copy? Slowly, in perfect unison, they nod. The movement too synchronized, too mechanical. We copy, they respond together, their voices overlapping in perfect harmony. Ready to return to base. I hesitate at the airlock. Something is very wrong. Protocol 10, the one not in the official documentation, the one Henderson told me verbally with a grim expression, echoes in my mind. If crew members exhibit synchronized behavior or speak in unison following proximity to the structure, do not allow them access to mission-critical systems. Actually, I say, forcing casualness into my voice, I need to check the perimeter one more time. Standard procedure. Why don't you two start the pre-launch sequence? I'll be back in 10. They respond in unison again. Confirmed. Pre-launch sequence initiated. I back away from the rover, mind racing. This wasn't in the briefing. The entity has never demonstrated the ability to affect humans at this distance before. The containment should have worked. Unless what we're containing isn't the entity itself, but merely a projection of it. A tendril reaching out from something far larger, far deeper. I activate my private communication channel to Houston, the one that bypasses the rover's systems. The quantum entanglement communicator Dr. Stern gave me, supposedly immune to the entity's interference. Houston, Specialist Carter, Emergency Protocol Omega. Crew compromised. Repeat, crew compromised. The 20-second delay feels like an eternity. Finally, copy that, Carter. Initiate Protocol Omega. Authorization code Tango Echo November 7-3. I swallow hard. Protocol Omega is the nuclear option, literally. The rover contains a small, tactical nuclear device, ostensibly for deep geological sampling. Its real purpose is to ensure that if containment fails, nothing returns to Earth. But Rollins and Park are still human, aren't they? They must be. Whatever's affecting them might be temporary. I can't just... The rover's engines ignite suddenly. It begins to move, turning not toward our base camp, but toward the structure. Houston, the rover is moving toward the anomaly. Rollins and Park are driving it directly toward the containment field. Another agonizing delay. Carter, you have no choice. The entity cannot be allowed to breach containment. You know what's at stake. I do know. The briefing made it clear. If the entity establishes a foothold on Earth, the simulations give humanity less than 72 hours. Total synchronization. 8 billion people moving as one, thinking as one, serving the entity's unknowable purpose. With shaking hands, I enter the authorization code on my wrist computer. A new menu appears. Confirm Omega Protocol YN. The rover is picking up speed, bouncing over the lunar surface toward the shimmering pentagon of energy surrounding the structure. Inside, I can see Rollins and Park, still moving in that unsettling synchronization, their hands flying over the controls. My finger hovers over the Y. Images flash through my mind. Rollins talking about his son, Park staring up at Earth with wonder in her voice. They're not just colleagues, they're people with lives, with families. I'm sorry, I whisper, though no one can hear. Me. I press it. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a brilliant white flash erupts from the rover. The shockwave hits me a second later, knocking me off my feet despite the low gravity. I tumble across the lunar surface, my suit's emergency systems blaring warnings in my ears. When I come to a stop and look up, there's nothing where the rover was. Just a new crater in the lunar surface, still glowing with residual heat. The containment field around the structure flickers but holds. I lie there, staring up at the black sky and the unblinking stars. 2 more deaths on my conscience, 2 more lives sacrificed to keep this thing, whatever it is, contained. Hours later, the emergency retrieval module from our orbiting command ship touches down nearby. The pilot helps me aboard without questions. He's been briefed, apparently. As we lift off, I look down at the containment field, still humming with energy around the deceptively dormant structure. We've bought time, that's all. The entity is still there, waiting, and somehow I know it's learning from each encounter, adapting, planning. Back on Earth, I deliver my report to Henderson and a room full of grim-faced officials I've never seen before. Men and women in dark suits with no agency insignia, no identification. I tell them everything, the containment, the effect on Rollins and Park, the nuclear option. When I finish, the room is silent. Finally, Henderson speaks. The containment field is holding, for now, but our models suggest it won't last more than 6 months. So we send another team, one of the officials says, better prepared this time. Henderson shakes his head. Dr. Carter's report confirms what we've suspected. The entity is adaptive. Each encounter makes it stronger, more knowledgeable about us. The next team might not be able to contain it at all. Then what do you suggest? Another official demands, her voice sharp with frustration. Henderson looks at me, then back to the group. We're implementing Protocol 11. A murmur runs through the room. I've never heard of Protocol 11. What's Protocol 11? I ask, suddenly aware that I'm the only person in the room who doesn't know. Henderson's face is a mask of resignation. The Lunar Quarantine Initiative. As of 0800 tomorrow, all lunar operations are suspended indefinitely. We're establishing a permanent no-fly zone around the moon. Any attempt to land on or orbit the lunar surface will be considered an act of war. You're abandoning the moon? I can't believe what I'm hearing. Decades of exploration, billions of dollars in infrastructure, the gateway to the rest of the solar system, all to be abandoned. We're containing the threat, Henderson corrects. The only way we can. But the public will be told that radiation from a solar flare has made lunar operations temporarily unsafe. We'll fabricate research data showing dangerous levels of cosmic radiation in cislunar space. It'll buy us time. Time. For what? I ask, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. Henderson doesn't answer directly. Instead, he slides a new folder across the table to me. This one bound in black leather with a silver emblem I don't recognize. You're being reassigned, Dr. Carter. Project Firebreak needs your expertise. I open the folder. The first page shows a schematic of what looks like an orbital weapons platform, the kind of thing prohibited by multiple international treaties. The next pages detail a network of satellites equipped with directed energy weapons, all pointed at the moon. This is insane. I say, closing the folder. You're talking about militarizing space, starting an arms race. We're talking about survival, Henderson replies coldly. That thing on the moon, it's just the beginning. Our deep space telescopes have detected similar anomalies throughout the solar system. Mars, Europa, the Kuiper Belt. They're everywhere, Dr. Carter, and they're waking up. One of the unnamed officials leans forward. We believe they're part of a network, a system that's been dormant for millions of years until we started poking around. What do they want? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know the answer. We don't know, Henderson admits. But based on the synchronization effect, we believe there's some kind of processing nodes, turning biological organisms into components of a larger system. For what purpose? Unknown, but we've found references in ancient texts across multiple civilizations to the Great Joining, a time when humanity would become one with the gods. Henderson's expression is grim. We think previous civilizations encountered these things and didn't survive the experience. I leave the meeting in a daze, the folder clutched in my hand. Outside, it's a beautiful spring day in Houston. People walk by, laughing, checking their phones, living their normal lives. None of them know how close we came to extinction. None of them know what's waiting up there, watching us from the lunar surface. None of them know that when they look up at the moon at night, something is looking back. I should tell them. I should go public with everything. But who would believe me? And even if they did, what good would mass panic do? So I go home to my empty apartment, pour a drink with shaking hands, and try not to look out the window at the waxing moon rising in the evening sky. I try not to think about Rollins and Park, about Dr. Akhtar and his team, about all the sacrifices made to keep Earth safe. I try not to think about Protocol 11, about Project Firebreak, about the militarization of space that's about to begin in secret. Most of all, I try not to think about Henderson's final words to me as I left the meeting. Sleep well, Dr. Carter, and remember, if you ever wake up and find yourself thinking the same thought over and over, or moving in perfect synchronization with strangers around you, use the pill we provided. It's better than the alternative. The memory hits me like a sledgehammer every time, that wavering transmission from the lunar surface. Dr. Akhtar's voice barely recognizable through the static. We were wrong, Mike. It wasn't abandoned. They were waiting. God help us, they were waiting all along. And now we're waiting too, watching the skies, building our defenses, preparing for a war against an enemy we barely understand, a war I fear we cannot win. But I keep that fear to myself as I report to my new assignment. At Project Firebreak, I review the weapons designs, the defense systems, the contingency plans. I attend the briefings about the other anomalies in our solar system, each one a potential foothold for the entity or entities to expand their reach. The work is classified beyond top secret. The facility itself doesn't officially exist, buried deep beneath a mundane office building in Northern Virginia. The team consists of the best minds from a dozen different disciplines, all working toward the same goal, finding a way to permanently neutralize the threat. Dr. Stern leads the research division, her quantum theories evolving into practical applications I can barely comprehend. She speaks of dimensional folding and reality anchors, concepts that sound more like science fiction than science, but I've seen the prototypes, watched as they bend light and matter in ways that shouldn't be possible. The entities exist partially outside our dimensional framework, she explains during one briefing. That's why conventional weapons are useless against them. We need to attack them where they actually exist. And where is that? I ask. Everywhere and nowhere, she replies cryptically. They're like the shadows cast by four-dimensional objects moving through our three-dimensional space. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself staring at the moon through my apartment window, its familiar face now sinister with hidden meaning. I wonder if the containment field is still holding. I wonder if the entity is still learning, still adapting. I wonder if it's watching me right now. And sometimes, just sometimes, I catch myself repeating the same thought over and over, or moving in perfect synchronization with strangers on the street. Those days, I keep the pill close at hand, just in case, because the alternative is unthinkable. 6 months after my return from the moon, Henderson calls me into his office. He looks older, more haggard, the silver in his hair now dominant. The room is different too, the NASA memorabilia gone, replaced by austere government-issue furniture. Even his prized Apollo artifacts have disappeared. The containment field failed last night, he says without preamble. Complete collapse at 0317 hours. My blood runs cold. The entity? Active and expanding. He pulls up a classified satellite feed on his computer. The image shows the lunar surface, the area around the former Artemis base. What was once a small, localized anomaly has grown. A dark stain spreading across the regolith, geometric patterns visible even from orbit. How long do we have? Henderson's expression is grim. The entity is converting lunar material into more of itself. At the current rate of expansion, it will cover the entire lunar surface in approximately 72 hours. And then it comes here. He closes the laptop. Project Firebreak is being activated. Full deployment. I think of the orbital weapons platforms, the directed energy weapons, the nuclear options. Will it be enough? Henderson doesn't answer directly. You're being transferred to the command center in Colorado, effective immediately. A car is waiting downstairs. As I turn to leave, Henderson calls after me. Dr. Carter, there's something else you should know. He hesitates, then continues. We've been monitoring global communications, looking for signs of synchronization. In the last 24 hours, we've detected a 300% increase in the use of certain phrases across social media. Phrases related to unity, to joining, to becoming one. It's starting already. We think so. The entity's influence may be able to reach Earth even without physical presence, through other means. What other means? Henderson looks at me, his eyes hollow. Dreams, Dr. Carter. People all over the world are reporting the same dream. A pyramid on the moon. A voice calling them home. The command center in Colorado is a marvel of technology and paranoia, buried deep within Cheyenne Mountain. The main control room is dominated by a massive display showing the lunar surface in real time. The dark stain of the entity now covering nearly a third of the visible side. Dr. Stern is there, along with military personnel from a dozen different countries. This threat transcends national boundaries, it seems. Even traditional enemies have united against this common danger. The first wave of platforms is in position, General Matheson announces. A grizzled veteran with more stars on his shoulder than I can count. Awaiting final authorization. The president's face appears on a secure video link. He looks as tired as the rest of us. You're certain this is the only option? Yes, Mr. President, Henderson replies. The entity cannot be allowed to complete its expansion. Once it controls the entire lunar surface, its power will increase exponentially. The president closes his eyes briefly. Very well. You have authorization. God help us all. General Matheson nods to a young officer at a control station. Initiate Firebreak Protocol. Authentication code Sierra Tango 97 Alpha. The officer enters the code. On the main display, we watch as the first orbital platform moves into position. A targeting reticle appears over the center of the entity's expansion. Platform 1, firing. A beam of concentrated energy, invisible in the vacuum of space but tracked by our systems, strikes the lunar surface. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the entity reacts. The geometric patterns shift, flow, reorganize. The dark stain pulses once, twice. No effect, Dr. Stern reports, studying the readings. The entity is adapting to the energy signature. Platform 2, firing. Another beam, this one using a different frequency. Again, the entity adapts. Platforms 3 through 7, simultaneous firing. Multiple beams now, a coordinated attack from different angles, different energies. The entity's response is more dramatic this time. The patterns swirl faster, the stain pulsating like a heartbeat. For a moment it seems to contract slightly. "We're having an effect," Henderson says, a note of hope in his voice. Then the entity does something unexpected. The patterns stop swirling and form a single, coherent shape, a symbol that makes my head hurt to look at directly. "What is that?" the president asks. Dr. Stern's face has gone pale. It's responding, communicating. Communicating what? Before she can answer, alarms blare throughout the command. Center. The main display flickers, then stabilizes to show a new horror. The orbital platforms, our first line of defense, are moving, not according to their programmed trajectories, but in perfect synchronization with each other. "The platforms have been compromised," General Matheson reports, his voice tight with controlled panic. "We've lost control." "Shut them down," Henderson orders. "Emergency protocols." No response. They're not accepting the shutdown codes. On the display, we watch as the platforms reorient themselves, no longer pointing at the moon, but at Earth, at us. "It's in our systems," Dr. Stern whispers. "It's in everything." The president's face is ashen. "Initiate Protocol 11B. Protocol 11B, the absolute last resort. The destruction of our own orbital assets, regardless of collateral damage, the potential deaths of thousands from falling debris, the certain collapse of global communications, navigation systems, weather monitoring. But before the order can be carried out, the main display changes again. The entity's expansion has accelerated dramatically. Now covering more than half the lunar surface, the geometric patterns have resolved into a single massive symbol that seems to pulse with its own inner light. And as we watch, helpless, the moon itself begins to move, not in its orbit, but its surface, the regolith flowing like liquid, reshaping itself into something new, something that looks disturbingly like a face with too many eyes. Too many mouths, all arranged in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. The face speaks, not with sound, but directly into our minds. A voice that is many voices, a thought that is many thoughts, all in perfect synchronization. "We have waited. We have watched. Now you will join us." Around me, people begin to move in perfect unison, their eyes vacant, their movements mechanical. Dr. Stern, General Matheson, even Henderson, all of them turning to look at me with the same expression, the same tilt of the head. "Join us, Michael Carter. Become one with us." I back away, reaching for the pill in my pocket, my last defense against the synchronization. But as my fingers close around it, I hesitate. What if they're right? What if joining is the next step in human evolution? What if resistance is not just futile, but wrong? The thought feels foreign, planted. I shake my head, trying to clear it. "Join us." The voice is louder now, more insistent. The synchronized people move toward me, their movements fluid despite the unnatural coordination. I raise the pill to my lips. "You cannot escape us. We are everywhere. We are everything." As if to prove the point, the lights in the command center flicker in a pattern that matches the entity's pulsations. The computer screens display the same symbol that covers the lunar surface. Even the air seems to vibrate in harmony with the entity's will. I swallow the pill. For a moment, nothing happens. Then clarity returns. The foreign thoughts receding like a tide going out. I can think again, move again, be myself again. But for how long? I run through corridors filled with synchronized personnel, past security checkpoints where guards stand motionless, their eyes fixed on something only they can see. I reach the surface level, emerge into a world that's already changing. The sky is wrong. The moon, visible despite the daylight, is no longer the familiar celestial body we've known for millennia. It's something else now. Something alive. Its surface crawling with patterns that seem to reach toward Earth like grasping fingers. And below, in the city sprawling at the foot of the mountain, people are stopping, cars halting in the middle of streets, pedestrians freezing mid-step, all of them turning as one to look up at the transformed moon. The synchronization has begun. I drive, away from the city, away from people, into the wilderness where the entity's influence might be weaker. The radio in the car broadcasts. Nothing but static, occasionally broken by a single phrase repeated in different languages, different voices, all with the same cadence. Join us. I turn it off. Hours later, I reach a remote cabin that Henderson once mentioned, a government safe house for situations exactly like this, though I doubt anyone anticipated a situation quite this extreme. The cabin is well stocked with supplies, communications equipment, and weapons. Not that weapons will help against what's coming. I power up the satellite phone, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, is still resisting. To my surprise, it connects. "This is Firebreak Actual," a voice says, distorted but recognizable. Dr. Stern. But her voice is her own, not the synchronized monotone of the entity's puppets. "Identify yourself." "Carter. Michael Carter. How are you still you?" "The pills," she says. "They buy time. Not much, but enough. There are pockets of resistance forming. People who were naturally immune or who had access to the countermeasure. How many? Not enough. Maybe a few thousand globally. We're trying to coordinate, but communications are compromised. The entity can hear anything transmitted electronically." "What's the plan?" A pause. "There's a theory. The entity needs the moon as a base, a focal point for its influence. If we could somehow remove that focal point." "Remove the moon?" I can't keep the incredulity from my voice. "That's not possible. Not remove it physically. But there's a prototype at the Alamogordo facility, a dimensional anchor that might be able to shift the moon slightly out of phase with our reality, just enough to weaken the entity's connection." "And you think that would work?" "It's all we have left to try." She gives me coordinates, instructions, authentication codes. The call cuts off before I can ask more questions. I look out the cabin window at the night sky. The moon hangs there, no longer recognizable as the celestial body poets have written about. For centuries. Now it's a writhing mass of geometric patterns, a window into some higher dimension where the laws of physics and biology don't apply, where consciousness itself is just another resource to be harvested and repurposed. I think about Rollins and Park, about their families who were told they died in a training accident. I think about Dr. Akhtar and his team, about Henderson and the others at the command center. All of them gone now, absorbed into the entity's growing consciousness. And I think about the billions of people across the planet who right now are losing themselves, their individuality dissolving into the collective mind of something ancient and utterly alien. The pill's effects won't last forever. Already, I can feel the pressure building again, the subtle push towards synchronization. The entity knows I'm resisting. It knows I'm a threat, however small. I gather supplies for the journey to Alamogordo. Food, water, weapons, the remaining pills. As I pack, I catch myself humming a tune I don't recognize. my fingers tapping a rhythm on the table that matches the pulsations I saw on the lunar surface. It's starting again, the influence creeping back in. I take another pill, knowing each one brings me closer to the end of my supply, closer to joining the entity, becoming just another node in its expanding network. The journey to Alamogordo will take days. Days during which the entity's power will only grow stronger. Days during which I'll need to fight not just external dangers but the corruption of my own thoughts. But I have to try, for Rollins and Park, for humanity, for the future. As I step outside, the transformed moon bathes the landscape in an unnatural light. Patterns of shadow and illumination that shouldn't be possible, that hurt the eyes and confuse the mind. In the distance, I can see people walking in perfect unison, all headed in the same direction. Toward what? I don't know. Don't want to know. I get in the car and drive, keeping my eyes on the road, trying not to look up at what used to be the moon, trying not to think about what happens if Dr. Stern's plan fails. Trying not to imagine a world where humanity exists only as components in some vast alien machine. The memory hits me like a sledgehammer every time, that wavering transmission from the lunar surface. Dr. Akhtar's voice barely recognizable through the static. "We were wrong, Mike. It wasn't abandoned. They were waiting. God help us. They were waiting all along. And now they're here, and we're running out of time. But lately, I've been wondering if it's really my memory at all, or if something else is remembering through me, waiting, always waiting."